This is going to be a video on my Jeff Buckley CD collection. I don't imagine this video getting a whole lot of hits just because I don't know that many people know who Jeff Buckley really is. He wasn't around for very long. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1997, just as his career was getting off the ground. However, the music that he did release, I feel, is just so outstanding and it's so moving. And for me, it's one of my Desert Island discs, his only official studio album that he released during his lifetime, which was Grace. But I have such a passion for Jeff Buckley's music. And if you already know who Jeff Buckley is and you've heard his music, you know exactly what I'm talking about. His influences were as diverse as Bob Dylan, Nina Simone, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Kiss, a lot of the same influences that I had growing up. And ironically, you know, his name is Jeff, so is mine. His middle name is Scott. My middle name is Scott. But that coincidence aside, the music that he left us is so just moving and profound and influential. If you haven't discovered Jeff Buckley yet, check him out on Spotify or, you know, another one of the streaming services, or even, you know, take a leap of faith and purchase one of his albums. Definitely Grace would be the one to get on CD, but I'm going to go through the CDs that I have and talk a little bit about each one of them. The first official Jeff Buckley CD that was released was called Live at Chennai. Chennai was a little coffee house in New York that he played at before he actually had a record contract. And I believe this was the first album that he recorded for Columbia after he was signed. This is the Legacy Deluxe Edition. It's a 3-disc set. There's the original album, and then there are some outtakes, some additional numbers from the set that he performed. There's a disc that has interviews and even some more additional material. It's almost like Live at Leeds, where the album originally was an EP and then it got expanded to a single disc, and now it's a sprawling 3-disc set. But definitely you can see all of his influences on here. There's a Nina Simone cover. He covers Night Flight by Led Zeppelin. He's got a couple of Bob Dylan covers on here. I believe he even covers the Smiths on here. It's just a wide variety of influences that guided his music and his songwriting. And there are some songs that would eventually end up on Grace that he does perform here. So this was his first album. And then his first and only official album release was Grace. This is one of my Desert Island discs. Definitely in my top 10 albums of all time. This is also a Legacy edition. It is a 2-disc set. There's the original album. There's actually a DVD that has some of the videos from Grace on here. And then there's a second CD of outtakes and other tracks that did not make the cut for the Grace album. But this is definitely, if you have not heard this album, you really owe it to yourself, particularly if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, if you are a Bob Dylan fan, if you are a fan of just great songwriting. He covers Leonard Cohen. Maybe his most popular song is a cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which is just such a deeply moving track on here, but his own tracks too. I believe the most popular track off here would probably be Last Goodbye, but every track, just his voice. One journalist described it as an oversexed angel. It's got Robert Plant influence in it, a little bit of Chris Cornell, who was also a big fan of Jeff Buckley. Robert Plant was a big fan of Jeff Buckley. But all his influences are really on display here, and his songwriting is just remarkable. The band is so tight and so great on this album. Jeff Buckley's father was Tim Buckley, who was a singer-songwriter in the late 60s, early 70s. If you are a fan of the Monkees, he was featured on, I forget which episode it was, but he performs a song at the end of that episode. And he was an absentee father, and so Jeff Buckley didn't really know his father growing up. Tim Buckley kind of just bounced in and out of Jeff's life. And then Tim Buckley died tragically of an overdose. I believe it was in 1975 or 1976. And then Jeff Buckley developed a career of his own, was a great guitar player, a great singer. And so he was signed to Columbia Records in the early 90s and then recorded this album, which unfortunately was his only release. And what happened was he toured, he promoted this album, critics raved over it, and then he went about recording his second album and did some studio tracks in New York, and then decided that he wanted to go to Memphis to re-record the tracks because he wasn't happy with some of the New York sessions. So he gets to Memphis, and the day that he arrives, actually he's there, and shortly after he arrives in Memphis, he and one of his road managers, I believe it was, they just wanted to go tour Memphis, and he went to the Wolf River just to sit on the shore and listen to music. He was very excited about the recording sessions, which were going to begin in Memphis for his second album, and waded out into the water of the Wolf River. And there were no swimming signs. It was a dangerous area. They were cautioning people not to swim in the area. And unfortunately, Jeff Buckley didn't heed that warning. He went out fully clothed. He had big, heavy boots on, and he was out wading in the water. And a large boat passed by, and Jeff Buckley unfortunately got sucked in underneath the water in the undertow and drowned. His body was found a few days later, a few miles upstream in the Wolf River. So just a very tragic story. And what we were left with were the unfinished sessions for an album that was going to be titled My Sweetheart the Drunk. And so this was the first posthumous album by Jeff Buckley. It's called Sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk. It's a 2-disc set. There are some of the New York sessions, definitely unfinished works, works that were in progress, some that may or may not have ever made the actual finished album. He does a cover of Genesis, the track from Lamb Lies Down on Broadway back in New York City. Does a track of he does a cover of Satisfied Mind. But just really unfortunate because he had so much talent, and he died tragically young. And this is the last, at least official release of any of his studio recordings. Like I say, it is a double disc. And this release was supervised by his mother, Mary Guibert, I believe her name was. And so she has been in charge of his estate ever since. This is a live album that he recorded to support the Grace album. It's called Mystery White Boy. And these are live tracks from 1995 to 1996. He does a medley of Hallelujah and I Know It's Over, the Smiths track, and a lot of the tracks from his first studio album, Grace, he does on here, as well as a few other obscure ones. And then this is Jeff Buckley, Grace Around the World. It also contains a DVD. And these are various live tracks that he recorded in support of the album Grace. There are some bonus features, some appearances on 120 Minutes, MTV, some VH1 behind the scenes stuff. And the DVD itself has 10 tracks on it. Most of the tracks that appear on Grace are on here. So it's just a cool, not only DVD, but CD to have, and just showcases his live act and just how talented he was. There's a couple of books if you're interested in reading up on Jeff Buckley. This one is called Dream Brother. This is his father, Tim, and this is Jeff Buckley. And it parallels the story. Part of the book, half of the book is Tim Buckley's story, and they alternate chapters. There's one chapter about Tim Buckley, and then there's another chapter about Jeff, and then a chapter about Tim, and then a chapter about Jeff. It's really fascinating reading. The reason it's called Dream Brother is that was a track from the Grace album where Jeff Buckley talks about his father and the fact that his father left him when he was young, and he didn't really know his father. And he had a friend who was going through a similar situation. He had a child and was about to leave the woman that he was married to, and Jeff Buckley was telling him in that song, don't be like my own father, don't leave me behind and abandon me like my own, or abandon your child like my father abandoned me. So this is a very interesting read. And then this is a book written by his manager, Dave Laurie. And I actually saw Dave Laurie. He read some passages from this book, and you get to answer some questions, ask questions, a question and answer session. So this is another great book that also talks about Jeff Buckley. So that is my Jeff Buckley CD collection. I don't know if I piqued any interest in Jeff Buckley after this video, but I really think the world of him. If you haven't discovered Jeff Buckley yet, make sure that you do. I'm maybe not the best person to talk about how great he is, but I've tried in this episode, so check him out. And everybody, as always, thanks for watching.